Hello, and welcome to Deadly Paranormal Podcast. I'm your host, Tony. In this podcast, I am going to be talking about the paranormal, ghosts, legends, folklore, and supernatural creatures. So, sit back, relax, and enjoy the show, and thank you for listening. In tonight's episode, I'm going to be telling you about 3 local cemeteries that I have been to. So here to start, Copper Ridge Cemetery. I grew up not far from the cemetery I'm about to tell you about. I have always been creeped out by the cemetery and the church that used to be here. I have went and investigated the cemetery, and it's an interesting haunt. My team and I have gotten growls and seen shadow figures in the cemetery. What I'm about to tell you is what I have found online about it. Copper Ridge is said to be haunted. There's been a lot of paranormal activity throughout this road. At the Old Baptist Church, shadowy figures have been seen, as well as screams coming from a nearby barn. A group of kids once left a tape recorder inside while they waited outside to see if it would pick up any noises. After a few minutes, they had recorded the voice of a little girl clearly saying, "Help me." The kids decided to leave the recorder there overnight, returning the next morning. They discovered sounds of things being moved around the church. After 15 minutes of recording, you can hear someone walk up to the recorder and turn it off. I wish I could find this recording. I would personally love to hear it, but I can't seem to find it anywhere. The church has been since demolished. The cemetery still remains. Pastor Joe Bullard of Knoxville believes in a lot of things that other people don't. He was at his center of a controversy in the mid-1990s when he opened up his Copper Ridge Baptist Church in rural Knox County to folks around the world who flocked to the church to see the glowing crosses that had begun appearing daily in the windows. Some people dismissed the cross-like images as merely a refraction of rays from the street light shining through the windows, but to Bullard, the crosses were some kind of sign, I believe, from God. Still, when the small congregation at the church, tired of the media frenzy, some of the visitors the crosses attracted, they and Bullard parted ways. The church closed its doors to pilgrims and changed its name. Of course, mysterious crosses aren't ghosts. But Pastor Bullard, now 79 and retired, says nearly 140-year-old Baptist church has a few of those things too. There were 3 of them in the church, he says, and lots of people seen them. One of them looked like George Washington. I've got a picture somewhere. We could never get a picture of, but a little boy with a Polaroid camera took their picture. There were 3 men in it. You can barely see them. Bullard has no problem reconciling his Christian faith with a belief in the ghost and the supernatural. One Sunday morning I was preaching. There was a racket like someone going up and down the steps, and up and down the steps, right by the pulpit that goes upstairs to another room. I looked over to those steps, and really comical, I told the people, whatever is there making all that racket, let them sit down on the front seat. The church was packed and everything was real quiet after that. Not every church is supposed to be haunted and has a legend to back it up. There were no specific ghost stories associated with the Seven Islands Church and the cemetery in the rural South Knox County near the south bank of the French Broad River, but the church, founded in 1802 and listed on the National Register of Historic Places attracts ghost hunters who report cold spots in the cemetery, mysterious lights in the bell tower. The cemetery, which is still in use, has graves going back to the early 1800s. One marker records that its inhabitant was killed by Indians in Virginia. In the mid-1990s, Copper Ridge Church had visitors from all around the world who flocked to the church to see the glowing crosses that appeared daily in the windows. Mystifying appearance of the crosses garnered media attention, as well as local newspapers and news stations covered unexplained phenomenon. You see, there were no actual crosses to form the 40-foot-tall spectacles. The crosses were seen in the windows of this 135-year-old Baptist church near Knoxville, Tennessee. This new pattern was the shape of an even-armed cross and could be seen in all 5 sanctuary windows, which had been installed in the church for 26 years. This was back in 1995. The crosses were not on the windows, but were suspended in mid-air like a holographic image some 30 yards away from the building. They appeared white in the daytime and at night with a street light as a light source. They were a fiery reddish gold. While it appeared the images on glass may be 4 to 6 feet tall, the crosses, as seen through the windows, stretched from the ground upward about 40 feet. Not only were there lighted crosses, the church began to experience healings and miracles as people proclaimed to be cured from alcoholism, addictions, and even cancer. So how could a church so blessed become a place where evil gained a foothold and earned its own dark reputation as suggested on many sites of the internet? How can there be dark shadows sighted in the cemetery? How can there be voices heard and recorded, not only disembodied, but asking for help? It seems as there were as many as 135 people visit this small old church during its time. It was known for the miracles, and unfortunately the media hype brought the curiosity seekers and thrill seekers. It didn't take long for the upright members of the church to want all of the attention to go away. It wasn't long before the church tried to hide the lighted crosses by darkening the windows. The smiles faded from the faces of the community and the darkness seeped inside. And soon the church was disassembled. The building became a place of teenagers, ghost hunters, and Satanists visited. Sadly, some vandalized the building. It was rumored on the internet that even the heads of cattle would be found inside, the result of a sickened occult ritual. Perhaps it was a ritual that caused the church to burn down, because now the church is gone. And the old outbuilding that stood for a while after the church, it too is gone. The charred remains can be seen in the tall grass among the young saplings to the right, facing the graveyard. There is even paranormal activity in the old cemetery, where the graves date back to the 1800s, and some even unmarked. Voices can still be heard begging for help. Mist and sometimes strange lights are seen, and shadowy figures roam the grounds, according to those that pass by. Many people have heard the voices. Sometimes the voices are of children. Others say they hear a male voice. Yet it appears that all is left are memories, tales, and perhaps the ethereal visitors of those who passed on before us. If you go there, please treat the cemetery with respect. If you're lucky enough to witness an apparition or hear a voice, try to respond with courtesy, as the spirits respond to kindness. Besides, these spirits have seen their share of circus-type behavior. Isn't it time that they experience a little peace? Of the cemetery off Copper Ridge Road is very active with supernatural paranormal phenomenons. My team and I have witnessed it. Our next story is about Old Gray Cemetery in Knoxville, Tennessee. Urban legends tell haunting tales, all centered around places of the dead. In Knoxville, Old Gray Cemetery holds a story that is so scary, it may just keep you up at night. It is a beautiful place, but it also holds a dark entity that roams the grounds. Do you dare to look for the ghost at this haunted cemetery in Tennessee? If you dare, listen on and find out what might be lurking and watching from the shadows as you enjoy this place of rest. Knoxville's Old Gray Cemetery has many beautiful marble statues and headstones. With 13 sprawling acres of lush green grass and beautiful blooming trees in the spring, it may be surprising to hear of the sinister tales that surrounding this place. The beautiful colors in the trees contrast nicely with the gray tombstones. There is always a sense of eeriness when it comes to the graveyards. However, you can just get lost in the beauty, but at least not forget what might be watching you nearby. The graves in the cemetery all date back to the 1800s, and during the day, it is certainly a peaceful place near downtown Knoxville. But as the sun goes down, there is a lurking figure who looms around the spreading shadows. The locals call her Black Aggie, or Dark Aggie. She is a dark and shadow apparition in a black robe and said to watch travelers. Stories of this dark entity hiding around the tombstones and wandering around the property are very prevalent in the Old Gray Cemetery. It is common to see Black Aggie at dusk, but more common for her to see you first. Some people have reported that before seeing Dark Aggie, they have mysteriously heard an unseen entity whisper their name. Spinning around naturally, they find nobody living to be in the vicinity. Visitors have also reported a crying sound to imitate from the rear of the cemetery, as well as a whistling noise of unexplained origin. One of the most interesting occurrences is when people who have taken photographs inside the cemetery have claimed that blurry shapes and malformed orbs appear. Dark Aggie is said to be haunting the Old Gray Cemetery to this very day. Informal paranormal investigations of the cemetery haven't yielded in much in terms of the origin for this potentially malicious entity. But most echoed advice is that if you see Dark Aggie, remain still and do not bring attention to yourself, or else, if you do, you risk being chased off the property. Another story is of Rosalie. She died young. She had a kidney ailment. Rosalie wanders through the cemetery looking for her hand. So if you meet her, tell her the board has it. They found it a few years later and they are going to reattach it. So she'll probably be satisfied with that answer. You can stroll or drive the winding avenues of Old Gray and see the excellent examples of Victorian art and architecture. The cemetery is a mixture of unmarked graves to massive monuments and mausoleums, which honor the lives of those buried there. The cemetery was dedicated on June 1st, 1952, with the sale of the first 40 grave lots. The first burial had, however, occurred on July 15th of the previous year, after a local man named William Martin died of wounds from a cannon explosion during the city's 4th of July celebration. Martin's grave was not marked, but a small marble memorial in the northwest section of the cemetery recalls the incident. Now, I have been to this cemetery. I have wanted to investigate this cemetery. But as of right now, they do not allow investigations, so I can only go during the day. Some of the occurrences that I've witnessed myself while in this cemetery was that I was at one mausoleum, and I'd heard rumors that if you knock on the door, you may hear a knock back. So I decided I was going to try this. I knocked on the mausoleum door and waited. I didn't get a response, but I heard the voice of a little girl. And I looked around, and the girl that was with me had heard it too. But there was no little girl around us. So I can't explain that. That is just one of my experiences there. Our last and final story is of Red Ash Cemetery. Red Ash Cemetery in Tennessee is said to be extremely haunted, as well as the railroad tracks, a nearby creek, a coal stack, and a train depot. The train depot has unfortunately been torn down. An 8 to 10 mile area here is said to have heavy paranormal activity. I have seen a website that named it one of the top 5 haunted places in the world. Witnesses have reported a half-human, half-goat figure that was nearly 8 feet tall with a pentagram on its forehead. A couple had seen this figure, and as they sped away, they had to cross a set of railroad tracks. Directly in front of them, there was a strange blue light that was hovering over the railroad tracks. It was about 10 feet wide. At the coal tower, people have seen an apparition of a man who had fallen off of them some 50 years ago. Also, in the office of the depot, reports of sounds of furniture moving by itself, and some have felt a presence of someone else in the room. Even reports of a train coming when the railroad tracks have been dysfunctional for nearly 50 years. Now, I've been to the area, and they still use the railroad tracks, because you will occasionally see railroad cars parked on the tracks. There used to be a gated grave in the cemetery, guarded by demons. That includes the Goat Man, who is said to only come out on February 29th. There is a woman who cries over her own grave. If you see her, she will chase you. Many have encountered her. She has glowing green eyes, and she will start walking towards you. Then she'll start jogging, then running, and finally flying towards you. She will leave once you pass the hill that the cemetery is on. Another story is of a woman who was camping with her boyfriend and another guy by the creek. Rumor has it that there was an argument between the three, and the woman's body was spotted by a train conductor from down in the creek. This is only a few of the stories from the area. There have been a lot of reports of cults that spend a lot of time in the area, so I suggest not to go searching this place alone or at night. I have been to this area many times. My team and I have seen some of the very strange things. My teammate has seen the glowing blue orbs. I've gotten many EVPs there as well. If you decide to visit any of these cemeteries, please remember to be respectful to the spirits there. Also, please do not vandalize these places. When these things occur, it hurts us in the paranormal field. And it gives us a bad name, because we're not the ones vandalizing them. We are there to find the stories of these people who've passed and learn about them. and try to help if we can. Thank you for listening to these 3 stories. If you have any questions or comments, please let me know down below, and I'll try to answer any questions that come along. But I really hope you enjoyed it. Have a great evening.